Hello everyone from the Novedge team. Welcome to today's webinar, Putting a Project Together with Vectorworks 2018. Today's webinar presenter, Jonathan Pickup, is an architect trained in New Zealand and in the UK with more than 30 years of experience. He has been writing and producing Vectorworks manuals and providing customer support for more than 15 years. His company, ArchonCAD, is the premier provider of third-party manuals and training resources for Vectorworks. He also runs the Vectorworks online user groups and provides its main direction. And let me tell you a little bit about today's webinar. It's, as Jonathan said, it's workflow. So previous webinars have looked at design layers, classes, viewports, and sheet layers. This webinars will look at bringing these concepts all together along with other concepts such as symbols and libraries to create an understanding of the workflow for putting a project together, of course, using Vectorworks 2018. And this is where you can find Vectorworks on the Novedge product page. And the Novedge is one of the largest online stores for design software. And we offer software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. So put us to the test and come visit our webpage at novedge.com. And for more daily software news and limited time promotions, pay a visit to the Novedge blog and follow us on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Coming up on our next Novedge webinar, adding V-Ray for Revit to your BIM workflow. And last but not least, today's webinar is free and is being recorded live. And if you want to rewatch this or any other webinar episodes on our collection, just head on over to Novedge's YouTube or Vimeo channels. And now, Jonathan, you're gonna take the lead and show your screen. And
there I am.
Yep, there you are. Take it away.
Sweet. All right, thank you very much, Barbara. So what I want to talk to you about is the sort of options that we've got in putting a workflow together. So I'm going to go through some basics. Now, I know in the past we've looked at design layers and we've looked at sheet layers and classes and all that kind of stuff. So what I really wanted to look at is how we're going to bring those together. And I needed to use a concept that was slightly bigger than just a small domestic building. So we want to look at a much larger building. So let's have a look. So we've got what kind of buildings are we sort of thinking about maybe. So we could be looking at a large single building like a school or an office. We could be looking at multiple buildings. So, and where I live, quite often school buildings are lots of smaller buildings on one site. So we tend to have multiple buildings. We could have a hospital, for example. We could have medium density housing subdivision, maybe high density housing like an apartment building. That's the one I'm going to play with today. In the past, I've looked at or taught clients with multiple building projects on large or with a large single building, but with multiple buildings scattered around like a holiday resort, or a large hotel, which in a lot of ways, a large hotel is like an apartment building. So some of these projects we can group together and we can deal with them in the same way. It's like a large single building with repeatable units, hospitals, apartments, hotels. That's what we're going to look at today. And we could deal with that, or perhaps we could deal with most of those together. So hospitals have repeatable rooms and some rooms that are not repeatable. Like a nurse's station might repeat, the rooms might repeat, but there might be different types of rooms, 1 bed, 2 bed, that kind of thing. Multiple building projects with repeating buildings like the holiday resorts, the schools, or the low density housing. How would we take care of those kinds of projects? So one of the things that we really need to look at is the concept of symbols and how we're going to use those, because that's one of the things I'm going to use a lot of. But before we go too far, we should really be looking at how many people are going to work on the project. More than one person, multiple people, how we're going to divide up their management, how we're going to divide up their responsibilities, because that's going to have a large effect over how you design your workflow. If you've got a single person, then it really doesn't matter so much how you use the building or how you divide up the file, because it's only one person working in the file. But as soon as you start to have another person helping, how are you going to get both people working on the project? Now, we could, of course, use project sharing, and then we could have a person check out, for example, if we're using a symbol for an apartment, what you could have is you could have one person check out that symbol, do the work to it. As soon as they then save and commit the changes for that to the project file, the other person working on the project could update and they could see those changes. So that'd be one way to work. Before we had project sharing, we used a system called referencing. Design layer, a referenced design layer viewport would work very well instead of a symbol. You could also reference symbols from one file to another. So these are just a couple of options that you've got if you've got multiple people working. So I've written some notes. So what I'm going through at the moment, I've actually printed off the notes from my website, so I'm just reading through them so that I know I don't miss anything. I just didn't want to miss anything out. Now, so one of the things that can work is I worked on a medium density housing project. It had about 15 houses on it. And it was really easy for me to draw the entire project because all I needed to draw was one house, and then I could put multiple units on the site. Now, the problem starts to become where we want to make sure that we're building a building information model. If we're building a BIM model and we put a symbol with a multiple unit and we put the walls either side of it and we put another one next to it, in fact, we end up with two walls in the same location. If you put a wall on the left side of your plan, what do you do on the right side of the plan when you get to the last unit? You've got to put a wall in there. So there are some actual challenges if we want to be totally correct with our models and with our modeling, how we actually take care of those symbols. So let's have a look at some basic concepts, design layers, and whether we can use design layers or stories with this. So just remember, we can use design layers to build the multiple story part of our building. So you can think of the design layers being like a series of boxes for storing objects to create the 3D model. So we're going to build a floor. I've got a multiple floor building that I'm going to work on. It's an apartment building. Please don't comment on the design of my apartment. I know it's not great, but I just want to look at the concepts. So remember that design layers are where things are, floor 1, 2, 3, 4. Classes are what things are, toilets, furniture, that kind of thing, doors, windows. So for example, the furniture is going to be on its own class, so I can turn off the furniture when I don't want to see it. I'm going to put lighting on its own class, so I can turn it on when I want it and turn it off when I don't want to see it. Door numbers will be on their own classes, doors will be on their own class, and so on. Now, I've covered this previously. So this idea of creating drawings for a building project, it looked at a single story building and it kept it in very simple terms, but if you want to look on my website, it's called 1704. So it was last year. It was actually a year ago, exactly a year ago, creating drawings for building projects. So what about symbols? I'm going to use a lot of symbols to speed up the creation of my apartment building. So remember that symbols are relatively small, repeatable objects. So you can use symbols for things like furniture, electrical, and so on. Let's start having a look at our project. So here's our project over here. I've got my Vectorworks project. So the idea would be that when you're creating these, you'd really want to make sure you're using symbols for the furniture, for the kitchen fixtures. Here we are, we've got the kitchen, we've got the table, dining table. The dining table, of course, does it need to be a symbol because we've got an object, a plug-in object that will do that? What about doors and windows? Do they need to be symbols because we've also got the concept of object styles? So one of the things that we might want to think of is that we've got two symbols or two layouts of our apartments here, and these are mirror images of each other. The question is often, how much repeatability do we want in the project? If it's an apartment building where every apartment needs to be absolutely identical, wouldn't that be a great idea to use a symbol? And you can see here, I've actually created a symbol for that apartment. This is another symbol for the other apartment, and they're mirror images, so it's easy enough to place one. Use your mirror tool to create the other one. So I've used an apartment for the entire, I've used a symbol for the entire apartment. So that includes the furniture, the doors, the windows, the walls, and so on. So what's going to happen to things like my wall styles and my stories when I start to do that? In this particular file, I've created stories. So I've created stories with Vectorworks. I've got stories here. You can see I've got very simple stories. This one has a foundation, it's got a finished floor, and it's got a ceiling that I might want to put in. So I've kept the ceilings at 3 meters or 10 feet, but I've got 4 meters between my floor to floors, which is about 13.5 feet. Why use stories for this part of the building? Well, I thought that stories would be quite powerful as a concept, because if, for example, the client said to me, well, actually the story one is not going to be apartments, we're going to put retail shopping in there, and we need to make sure that we've got, 15, 16 feet between that floor and the next one above, so that we can put services in, so that we can put decent height ceiling and so on. What would happen? So if we edit that floor and we say we really want that to be a lot higher, let's make it 5 meters, or what was I saying, 16 feet. So do we want to move the story and all the stories above it here? Because if you don't, what happens? It moves that story only, and story 3 is going to become really short. So we do that, and now it's updating. Just here you can see it's updating all my story bounded objects, and all my stories should have moved. I didn't move the story in the one above it, did I? Let's just undo that and cancel it, and I'll do it again. So make sure that when you do these changes that you do all the floors above, otherwise I'll end up with some very short buildings. So what about my walls? So when I draw a wall in this story, I might have walls that are connected to fit between the stories. This is my apartment building. I've got my wall style. I've got my external wall. So when I draw my external wall, I'll just make sure I'm just going to use that one. We're going to apply. Okay, let's draw a wall. So what we really want is this wall to stretch between the stories of my building. So when we create this, we want this to start on my layer elevation, and we want it to finish at the finished floor of the story above. Great. That's nice. It means that when I build my building, when I change my story heights, that wall will automatically move. What about the walls inside the apartment? Well, that apartment is a symbol. As soon as I start to use my stories, or I start to use my walls in a symbol, I lose access to my story and my story controls. So if we have a look at this symbol, I'm going to edit it. I've just double-clicked on it to edit it. And as soon as I start to look at this wall, I cannot use my top bound as my ceiling or as my story of the floor above, because I'm inside a symbol. Vectorworks will not recognize the ceiling. You can see what's happened. My wall's lost its height completely. I could use my layer wall height, but Vectorworks doesn't know what the layer wall height is for that wall. So if you start to put walls inside a symbol, you have to have some wall styles like this one, which is designed not to match my stories. So let's just have a look and edit my style. Insertion options. So in this particular case, for this wall style, my internal wall, I'm setting this so that it ignores my stories and just uses my layer elevation with a manually entered height. Okay, not so bad. I mean, generally we're going to have our apartments with a fixed ceiling height anyway, so maybe it's not a big issue. But if I try to use a wall style that I've used on other projects that does link to my stories, it's not going to work. You've already seen it. I showed you what happens. It loses its height completely. But why then use the stories and the walls connected to the stories for the rest of the building? Well, because that, I thought, gave me quite a lot of flexibility and quite a lot of speed at creating the design that I wanted. Because these are connected to my stories, if I change my stories, so let's go back and do that properly this time. So working on floor 1, let's go to our stories. we'll change this one. We're going to make that 16 feet. Okay, let's move the story and all the stories above it. Now they should all change. I should see the numbers all change. And remember, I've got a 4-story building here, or a 5-story building, so it's going to change all the walls on all the stories. And you can see they've all updated. Okay. And so that wall has updated. It's now got the height connected to the stories. So there's a huge power in using the stories on the exterior walls, because that'll work really, really well. So I guess one of the questions, I haven't seen anyone ask me yet, but I guess one of the questions is, well, which walls should you put connected to the stories and which walls shouldn't you connect to the stories? I'm just going to delete all of my symbols so you can see which ones I've used. So those walls that you can see now are the walls that I've drawn live in the story of the building. All the other walls that I've deleted were part of the symbol. So I'm just going to undo that and bring all those back. In fact, also, you might notice I've lost my stair. So I also need to undo that to bring my stair back, because I changed the height and now my stair settings don't work because my stair wrapped around that part of the building. Okay, so let's just undo that and exit my symbol. And my stair should be back. So there it is, my stairs come back. So I thought that there was quite a lot of power in using symbols to control the internal layout of the apartment, but using the walls connected to stories for doing the exterior of my building. So that wall is an exterior wall that's live. This wall is an internal wall. So this is it's a wall between two apartments. Intertenancy wall, I guess you'd call it. And this wall hasn't been drawn completely, so I'll just draw that across. So we've got fire-rated walls between those. As I was doing the plan the other day, I realized, of course, because I'm drawing the walls live on this floor of the building, I could, if I wanted to, even though these two apartments are mirror images of each other, one of the things I could do is to have different window configurations on this apartment than on this one over here. I know it's a subtle difference, but in these two apartment windows here, one's on that side of the room and this one's on the other end of the room, or the other side of the room. So it gave me quite a lot of flexibility in making each apartment slightly different in its window configuration, while still keeping the window or still keeping the apartment, the symbols, consistent. So let's have a look at my symbol. Here it is here. And you might notice that in order to know the size of the symbol, I've used rectangles. I could have used I could have used spaces for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that to the corner. That goes there. I need an extra one, I think, down this end here. And I need some of these because I want to build a sort of an island down here. So when I make that change, what will it affect? And you'll notice it's affected these two apartments. Hasn't affected this apartment because this apartment is a different design. So it's subtly different, this apartment. I don't have my windows in here, and I'm going to put some windows in. So someone's asked the question if they only have fundamentals and spotlight, and the stories Vectorworks Architecture, and it is. So stories is an architectural feature, and without stories, you don't get the freedom and flexibility to design these sort of very large projects. But I would just, before you leave that, I would have a look to make sure that you don't have stories, so that if you go to your organization dialog box, have a look, see if you got this tab for stories there. If you haven't got it, Ryan, then I'm sorry, it's just not there. So we've looked at the concept of symbols. We've looked at the concept of how we're going to put this information in. Now, at the moment, I've got this particular floor is using symbols for these apartments. So which means that I've really got one person I'm working on the project maybe, or I could use project sharing and somebody else could check out that symbol and actually be in control of it and edit it for me, and then I could see the changes. So let's have a look. So what are we missing? So I've got some sketches that I've done on my website to talk about why I've put the walls on the outside. So there are times where stories don't work for you. I'll just bring my notes back across and show you what I'm thinking about. So if I'm working on a project, and here's my sketch about why I put my stories on the outside. So there are some projects where stories won't work. So for example, if you're working on a large project where you might have two buildings, you want them in the same file, then we want to have each building to have different floor-to-floor heights. So this one's got, maybe 10 feet, this one's got 13 feet. We can't use stories for those two buildings. Vectorworks doesn't like to have stories that occupy the same volume. So you can't have story 1 building 2 and story 1 building 1. You can only have story 1, and it has to cover both. So there are times when you're working on multiple buildings where stories really don't work that well. So now I want to talk about object style. So again, this is a basic concept, and what about an object style related to or instead of symbols? Lee, you've asked a question about if I've got doors within symbols, and I suppose I can't number them sequentially, correct? Absolutely correct. But Lee, it's a question of efficiency. Is it more efficient to have your windows, to have your doors numbered sequentially, or is it more efficient to have all of your apartment plans consistent? And I'm afraid that you're going to have to choose one or the other. So object styles. So an object style in Vectorworks is partway between a symbol and a plugin object. So I can choose, for example, to have object styles for doors and windows, where I can then start to, let's have a look, I think I've got one here. This is a window style. So this is a style called window type 1. If I want to create another window type 1 and place it somewhere, so we've got a building up here, I can find my window style, so my doors. So one of the tricks I use with Vectorworks is to make sure that when I'm looking at my current project, I'll just make sure I hide my other favorites and everything. So here's my project, my apartment building. I've actually created a folder to hide or to place my apartments to make them easy to find. All my doors are in one place, doors and windows are together. I should really have another folder for furniture. So we go new folder, it's a symbol folder, and it's going to be called furniture. And then I really should find my furniture and put it into that folder to make it easy to locate. So it's a queen bed, so I can drag that into furniture. Now, did I make that inside doors? I did. Okay, so let's just drag that furniture folder back to there. So there it is, back on my root level. So the resource manager makes it really good to drag and drop your parts around. So we had furniture, there's a queen bed, that wants to go into furniture. What else do we want to put in furniture? Well, we've got a couple of chairs here that we might want to reuse. Make sure they're in furniture as well. And while we're talking about making symbols, we should make sure that we take our symbols and make sure that when we have a symbol, it's automatically assigning itself to the correct class. So let's have a look here. I've got a queen bed. Let's edit my symbol options. So when I use this symbol, should it be world-based? Absolutely. Should it insert in walls? No, it's a bed. Should it convert to a group? No. And what should the class be? Well, the class should always be, whenever I use this symbol, this piece of furniture should always assign itself to the correct class. If I do that, it's going to speed up dramatically the way that I make my drawings, because I won't have to think about what class is that furniture on, or worse, not think about it, and then someone says, why is this furniture appearing on this class or on this drawing? So let's have a look. So that's on furniture main. Don't insert that into walls. And so the idea is to make these changes to your insertion options to speed you up. I'm going to check this one as well, edit my options. So if I leave that one insert in walls, when I place this couch near a wall, it can suck into the wall and be placed in it. Now I know that there's an option when I'm placing symbols that I can go here and I can say, don't insert that symbol into a wall. But the problem with that is I've got to actually think ahead of time and think, do I want this to go into a wall? And I've got to find it on that toolbar. If I change it here, I don't have to think about it. That symbol will never insert into a wall, and it's something else I don't have to think of. Now I can worry about the design, I can worry about the placement. I don't have to worry about the technique or the technology. So you should really create symbols for your objects. You might notice I've even created symbols for my wall styles to make them easy to locate. Now I know I could go up here and I could go wall styles only, because at the moment I have all resources. But sometimes I find it a hassle. You go to all resources and then you have to go back here and choose text styles or gradients or symbols. Whereas if you put them into folders, it's quite quick. It's one click and you're there. You can see everything and you can change your mind without too much worry. So let's just get out of that because I don't want to place a symbol. So let's have a look at our symbol here. Let's double click on that. Let's have a look. Someone's placed these doors on the wrong class. So that's a group. I'm just going to ungroup everything. That door there, I'm going to send it to the back. I want to be able to select that door, this door here as well. Someone's been placing these and they've placed them on the wrong class. And you can see graphically, they're not the style that I wanted. If we have a look, they're on the foundation class. They should be on door main. Again, if I have a door symbol, the door symbol should take care of that for me. So if we have a look at door type B, let's edit that. And that should be on door type B. Now this is actually a door style. So here when we make our door style, so when you make your door style for the very first time, ensure that your door is on the right class. If you don't, then you might find that as you put each door in, it changes to the class of the original object. So what's the difference between a symbol and a door style? So what we have here is an ability with this dialog box to choose which parts of the door are controlled by this dialog box and which parts are flexible in my design layer. For example, if I wanted the width to be flexible, I can click on that parameter there and I get this different icon with these, I call them sliding bars or sliding bars. There must be a Vectorworks description for this, a sort of a parameter. It's the object info palette makes that parameter flexible, whereas this icon says that my style is controlling that width. So what would you use this for? Well, maybe, for example, the depth of the jamb might be flexible. You might want to use the wall depth so that you can use exactly the same symbol, but use it in different thickness walls so that it just changes automatically. It's still the same door symbol, it's still the same configuration, but some parts are flexible. So we can put those back. In this case, I've controlled nearly everything, except I think the ID tag and the number, maybe. This is one of the things I tend to do, is to control that. Is it on schedule, yes or no? So somebody brought up the idea that if we have doors, and the doors are symbols, so if we make them into a symbol and we don't give the ability to control the ID number, the label here, if we don't make that flexible, then every door ends up with exactly the same number. But that's not a problem, because while I want to use the door to create the plan view and the 3D thing, I don't really want the door to control the door numbering, because I've put my doors into a symbol. I don't have control over the door numbers. If I turn the door number on in the symbol, that door will have exactly the same number in this symbol over here and on every floor of the building. So what's the way around it? Well, I know it sounds a little bit long-winded, but one of the ways around it might be to have separate objects or separate symbols to control door numbers. Now, the other challenge might be that you want to create a door report that reports very specific information for you. For example, we might want to have a door that reports, I think I've got one here. So here's a symbol, and this wants to record things like, I'm just going to move my navigation palette to another screen. So this might want to record things like the door number, how many hinges, what type of hinges, what the hinge color is, what kind of door handle, has it got a privacy lock, has it got smoke seals. Quite often in these cases, architects tend to have their own requirements for what they want to report about each door. Do you want the door size? Do you want the door configuration? Do you want the door swing, left or right swinging door, opening in, opening out, privacy lock, apartment number, you know, the little vision thing that you can look through to see who's at the door. All of those things might want to be part of your record or your door report. So maybe instead of doing it, instead of getting the doors to report, maybe you could use your own symbol and create your own door report. And that's what I've chosen to do in this particular case. That does allow me to have a door number which has the apartment number for each door. So it's not just door 1, it's apartment A, door 1, apartment A, door 2, apartment A, door 3, and so on. This is a drawing philosophy more than anything. So for example, if it was during construction and the contractor had damaged a door, it might be easier to say to the contractor, well, it's door DA1-02 in apartment 1. And then the contractor would know exactly which door, because on plan, it would show exactly which door. But this is a personal choice. So I'm not suggesting this is how you have to do it. I'm just offering it as an alternative. So you can see I've created several doors. So I guess part of the issue is, how do you make a symbol like this? And how do you make it report the information that you want? So this is using a concept which is called link text to record. So if I change this number and I just call it D01, you'll see that number's changed to D01, apartment 1. How does that work? This is a symbol. So what I do to start with is I create a object and I put some text in it. And the text and the object are then made into a symbol. So right click, sorry, you can't right click and make it a symbol. Modify, create symbol. Sorry, I've just been teaching landscapers and that's how they make plants. So let's create a symbol. So what this is going to be my door number object. Insertion point, plane projection center would be pretty good. It's going to be world-based. I'm going to put that on the class called door ID. That'll be quite handy. Yes, and we're going to leave instance in place. So I'm going to put that into my door folder to make it easy. And that's now a symbol. Let's edit that symbol. Let's edit the 2D component. And I've got my symbol, my object, and I've got my text. So I make sure that I've got my text the right size, is it the right font, the right size, you know, is everything correct? Is it the right justification? Because once you've done all that, then it's easy to go tools, records, and link text to record. Now, I already have created my record for this. If you haven't already created your record, you'll have to create it ahead of time. It's called my door number record. So this door number record has been designed to record information. So I'm going to edit this. So it's gone to my other screen. Let's bring that across. So here's my door number. So apartment, it's a number with a default value. Let's edit that and let's change that from a number to text so it can say anything I want. What about the door number? Well, that wants to be text, a range of numbers and text. Hinges, door color. What else do we want to record? We were talking about the door handle. What about the door handle color? Door handle color, sorry, I spelled it wrong. So door handle color. do we want to limit the choices of the architect when they're specifying this information to a number, an integer, text, pop-up, and so on. So let's go pop-up. So what are my choices? Well, it could be brass, it could be satin chrome plate, it could be stainless steel, etc. So having those as a pop-up, then I can choose the most common one as my default. That way when I create that or I use this, I can actually just say to Vectorworks, here's a pop-up, let me choose this one. And exit my symbol. So that's exiting the symbol, but we forgot to do our link text to record. So let's go Tools, Records, and Link Text to Record. Now I can choose what I want. We want to have the door record number. We want to link that to our door number. So I can choose any of my records that are already here, ones that Vectorworks has made or ones that I've made. I could have the hinges shown. I could have the apartment number shown. So maybe what you want to have is some text. I'm going to make that smaller. So maybe what you want to have is the apartment number, then the door number. So we're going to create 2 bits of text. The top one is going to become the apartment number. So we then go Tools, Records, Link Text to Record. So this is going to be my door record, that's apartment number. And this is going to be my door number. So Tools, Records, Link Text to Records, door number, door number. So now I have an apartment number as part of my object and a door number as part of my object. So now when I go to my data and I say this is apartment number A1 and the door number is D01, I've got control over those. So it gives me the flexibility of creating the graphic style that I want, putting the information in that I want. You could even link or you could even type in the door size. And maybe instead of the apartment number, it should be the door type number, which I haven't yet added. So let's go edit. I don't think I've added door type. So let's add door type. So door type, this is a pop-up. And my pop-up list is going to be type A, type B, type C. Okay. Where have they gone? Okay. No, I don't know why they just lost them all. Let's do that again. So I'm going to copy that. Go to the end, enter, type B, and I'm just using my paste to paste those in, door type C. So I've got those. Door type A is the most common, so if it's an internal door, door type B might be the most common. Door type C might end up being, for example, my toilet door. I'm going to lift that up to there. So I've got apartment, door number. So door number first, apartment number, door type. And then I can come back to my object and I can say, okay, I've made a mistake. I actually want door type. I want this to be linked to my door type. So we go records, link text to record, and I want that to be my door type, type B. So now you can see it's a type B door and it's D01, and you can still type in whatever you want for the D01, so it can be D01, apartment A, for example. So that's an example of using the link text to record to create those that you want. And I think that creating the pop-ups is also quite handy, where you've got, I think I've got them here on my windows, where I've got door type or window type A, window type B, and so I've got a preset number of options I'm going to have for my doors and windows. And here, I'm only going to have a few choices for my glazing. Are they double glazed? Are they low E glass? Are they obscure glass? So there might be a case here where you want to make some of the glass obscure and so you make the choice. But why give people the option? Why make it so that it's a pop-up list instead of getting them to type it? Well, I figure if you create the pop-up list like this, first of all, you don't have to put up with typos, errors in typing. You end up with a consistency. So all type A's are capital T and a capital A. You never get the case where someone's typed a lowercase a. Also, you don't get someone typing a type E, window type. I don't want a type E. I only want the 4 types. So you don't get people making their own choices, and you don't get people making typos. Particularly when we get into more detail. For example, we had that door, and we had the ability to have what sort of handle color. Well, we only want those few. What sort of privacy lock, yes or no? So that no one can say, or no one can type in something that's not what I was expecting at that point. So let me just bring up my notes. I want to make sure I'm covering all the stuff that I want to cover. So I've talked about window styles. I've talked about door styles. I just want to make sure I've looked at workflow. We've done that. We've looked at repeatability. So I've talked about repeatability. I've talked about window and door numbers. I haven't created a door report yet. There aren't that many doors, so it's not going to be that big. But I've talked about the pop-ups, and now we could start to talk about creating drawings. So before we go too far, I want to make a report. So tools, let's create a report. I want to create a custom report. This is my door schedule. So I'm going to look for objects with a record using the door number record. And we want all of those things to be found. So it wants to find all of those things and report them about all of the doors. But we are not going to look inside symbols. We're not going to look inside viewport annotations. And we're not going to look inside design layer viewports. And that creates my report of all of my doors. So that's for apartment number 2. So I can now go and say, let's make sure that we sort them. Sorted by ascending. So it looks like I've got lots of doors in apartment 1 and hardly any in apartment 2. And that's probably because when I created these ones, I didn't change their apartment number to apartment B. So apartment number B. And let's have a look here. We'll just reschedule that or recalculate that one. And so we've got apartment 1, we've got apartment B, and you could, if you want to, change these to apartment A because they need to be apartment A. And you can see that's now starting to change. So you've got control over these. You could change the door color, you could change the door finish. We could even change the door number. And it looks like I've got one here, which looks like a window instead of a door. So I just need to be careful and find that one. So since that one's a mistake, how do I find it? Right click just here, select the item, and it finds that one. I did have trouble with that one the other day. So let's detach that. And now that shouldn't be available on my report. My door schedule. Let me open that. And it's gone. So that's now gone. I've now fixed. No, sorry, it's still there. Where is it gone? Let's recalculate. Now it's gone. So that's a way of finding the things. And then, of course, because I've got these with pop-up for some of these, the door handle color, here we can click here and we can choose that door has got stainless, and this one is satin chrome plate, and this one is brass, and so on. And so you can choose from the pop-up here as well, giving you the same types of controls. So let me just check my notes, bring my navigation palette back, dock that in there. So what else could we have done? So instead of having this apartment as a symbol, we could have had an apartment like this one. Now it looks the same, except it hasn't got my door numbers on it. So here we've got not a symbol, but a viewport referenced. So I've created a reference between an apartment file, so somebody else can actually draw all of my apartment layouts. And as they make changes, I will see those changes here. Right click, edit. Do I want to open this file? Okay, and I can double click. Do we want to edit the design layer? Okay. Do we want to open the reference file? Yes. Now, no one else has got access to this file, so I can open it quite happily. So let's grab that information there. Let's make an island unit like that. And we'll just push it back off the table. So that should have made a change to the design of my plan. Let's grab some of these seats and we'll just rotate these seats so you can see them. Put those there. And let's save that file. So I'll just use my keyboard shortcut to save it. And let's go back to my apartment building. So I've made a change to that apartment design. Vectorworks is now showing me that this is out of date. The red lettering gives it away. Right click, update. And you can see everywhere that I've used that referenced viewport, the apartment has updated. So what I did do is I created two apartments, apartment A and apartment B. So two different designs on different layers. These have the walls on these layers. I'll just turn off my clip cube. Now in this case, you could actually set the wall to be connected to the layer wall height. So instead of connecting it to the elevation, you could actually connect it to the layer wall height, and then it would come through. Be careful of that. When you reference the files together, just make sure you're careful about those wall heights. So how are we getting on with questions? Let's have a look. So I think I've covered quite a lot at the moment. Now I'm going to have a look at some questions. So where we have a case of a site plan and we have several houses, it's better to have the several houses as a reference file, or have the houses as symbols. And in symbol, we won't lose the ability to turn off and turn on the layers. So Flavio, if we use a site plan, so this would be like a holiday resort or a multiple unit development, a subdivision type thing with multiple houses. One of the questions is always, how many people are working on the project? If you're working on the project on your own, what you might find is that it doesn't matter one way or the other. You can create a layer for your house and bring it in, and I've done that before. But the other thing might be, what if you've got several different house designs? You might find it easier to have someone else working on it, or even if it's you alone, having a different layer or a different file for the house design. Because as you say in your question, if you use a symbol, you lose the ability to turn the layers on and off. But on a large, so what's easier? It's sometimes, Flavio, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know, so if I bring in a design layer viewport, sure, I have the ability to turn off the roof as a layer on that viewport. But if I've got 30 or 40 of those buildings, then I have to select all of them and turn them all off. Wouldn't it be easier to maybe have the roof on a class and turn the class off? Because one of the things you can do with the design layer viewport is you can set I think this is my design layer viewport here. When I go to classes, one of the options I do is to use the document's class visibilities. What this means is, if the class furniture is turned off in my navigation palette, so if I go to my navigation palette and turn off the class, this dialog box will not use classes for each design layer viewport. It'll use my navigation palette for the classes, and it'll turn them all off. So maybe that's a better way of doing that multiple development. And the multiple development might be better if you used a different file, because at least that way you can use fit walls to roof, you can build the roof on another layer, you can control the 3D model that much better. And that's what I've tended to use with hotel type resort projects. You've got a site plan which has got a site model in it, I hope it's got a site model. And if you use a design layer viewport, or even if you use a symbol, you can still use center surface to get each symbol at its own elevation relative to the site model. Lee, I'm not sure whether using the reference department versus the symbols controls the file size better. Because if you import the design layer viewport, you can tell it to not to import. When you create the design layer viewport, you can tell it not to bring in the information into your file, which is okay, reduces your file size in this file. But Vectorworks still has to import the information, and so like from a memory point of view or from a printing point of view, there isn't a saving in the file size. If you wanted to take this apartment building home for the night and work on it, Lee, then there would be a problem, because you need to make sure you take both this apartment building, plus you have to take all the source files with you. If you embed them in, then you can just take them. Let me see if I can edit that. Edit settings. So this is the option here I'm talking about, Lee, the save referenced cache to disk. So what happens when you tick that, it actually takes all the information from that other file, it brings it in and stores it as part of this file, and then when you update that other file, it updates the storage in this one. So this file does grow in size because it copies all the information from the other file in. Turning that off saves this file size because it's not imported. But as I said, be careful if you ever want to work on this in a different location, because you'll need to make sure that you've brought that through. So I can cancel that. How are we getting on for time, Barbara? There doesn't seem to be that many questions.
No, we're doing good. Yeah. This is your chance, guys, and I hope this was helpful. I
was really expecting a lot more questions.
I know. I guess everybody's so much more knowledgeable than we thought. There's one question that popped up right now.
Yeah. So Ryan, reports are in every version of Vectorworks, even fundamentals. It's been part of Vectorworks from such a long time ago. And they're things that people don't use enough of. This ability to create reports, to count, you can count up the furniture, you can count up the walls, you can count up the area of the wall. I mean, there is so much you can do with reports. Tools, reports, and create report. But before you do create a report, Ryan, make sure you've thought through what you want it to do. It's always a good idea when you're creating a report to get a scrap of paper and sketch out, just in rough pencil form, what am I looking for? What information do I want? What information do I want to make a report for? So you could say, okay, I need to count. Ryan, you're doing entertainment, I guess. Do I want to count up tables? Well, have I got a table object? Great, I've got a table object. I can create a report. What information do I need about the table? Do I need the color? Do I need the number of seats? What do I need? And then you can work back from that and create your reports. I've got reports that do all kinds of cool stuff, like calculate the areas of a roof, calculate the volume of water, calculate the size of the downspouts to make sure that I've got the right size downspouts for the area of the roof flow. I mean, there's so many things that you can do with reports. They are just so cool and so powerful. Should really do them. You should really learn them when you do fundamentals. So the idea with creating a report for paint colors is you must have something that's got a color of paint on it. So the first step is that you need to create that record format like I showed here. So we create a new resource, and it's going to be a record format. There it is, I found it. So let's say, Ryan, that you want to create a paint color. You want to record paint colors. You want to record a paint color. What do you want? You want a paint color. Now, I suggest a pop-up's not the good one for this one. Paint color. Okay, and okay. So what kinds of things can I attach that paint color to? So if I draw an object like that, Ryan, I can go up here to data and I can say, let's attach a record, and we'll attach paint color to that record. So select, and my paint color is, where's it gone? So that object, oh, there we are, paint color. So this is blue. And it might have a sort of a Mansell number, or it might be a Rosine color. So Rosine blue. This one might be a different object, so we go, let's just attach the paint color. So one of the tricks with record formats is you can actually attach them to anything. And then you go up here and go Tools, Reports, Tools, Reports, Create Report, and I'm looking for something with a paint color. And it'll then start to record all the things that have got paint colors. Super, super powerful, those things. You don't get me started. I think, Barbara, have we done one on worksheets before?
I think we have, so I'm gonna look it up and maybe.
Yeah, if you could look it up and tell Ryan where it is. So
I will.
Okay, so so how do you create the pop-ups? So let's go back to my paint color. Let's edit that one. Let's create a new one, and we'll call it paint finish. So paint finish, you just click here and you go, I want that to be a pop-up, and then it brings up this thing for defining the choice. So that it's gloss, matte, semi-matte. Okay, and what's my default? My default might be semi-matte. Okay, and that's now created a pop-up. It's pretty straightforward. Why do I use a separate object to report it on a door rather than using the door itself? David, I think I thought I'd gone through that, where if I try to report the door itself, there might be some information that I want that's missing. For example, smoke seals, or the color of the door handle, or the vision panel, or the kick plate, or something along those lines where I might want it to be myself. But also, the problem with the door number is that because I've used the door inside a symbol, I don't end up with individual numbers. How do you create a design layer? So let's delete this one here. So I'll delete those ones. So I want to bring in the file. I want to create my design layer viewport and bring it in from the other field or from the other file. So it's creating a viewport. So it's view, create viewport. Create on layer, floor 2. Select source. So this is the trick here. So just by choosing a design layer floor 2, it makes a design layer viewport. But what we want to do is to get the file or get the information from another location. So we select our source. This is an external document. It's an existing reference that I've already created. So let's create a new reference. It's called apartment A. Where's it? Apartment type A, that's the one there. So let's choose apartment type A, and okay. Now what layers do we want? We want apartment B, please. Okay, so that'll just bring through apartment B. And this is the thing I brought up earlier, where I say use documents class visibilities, so that whenever I'm using this design layer viewport, I can use my navigation palette to turn off all my furniture, turn off all my doors, turn off all my electrical, and so on. And there it is. So I can rotate it, and then I can position it, and it sticks in there, and I'll just send it to the back so that my walls appear. So that gives me the guide for drawing my exterior walls. So down here, this one has electrical, but I think electrical's turned off. Services, electrical. So there's my lighting. It turns on that apartment. So I can put those parts inside my symbol, makes it really quick. Yeah, and someone said they'd like to see the worksheets tutorial if that's possible. certainly on my own website, there's I actually covered in my beginners course, and I've created several manuals on worksheets, and it's something that comes up on a regular basis. I just don't think people use worksheets or reports enough. So if I talk about database, or I talk about worksheets, or I talk about schedules, or I talk about reports, it's all the same thing. And I think other than creating all the drawings, that covers quite a lot of ground.
And I'm still searching for the webinar on worksheets, so I'll notify you as soon as I find it.
Cool. Well, looks like it's 7 o'clock.
Yes, I wanted to mention this. If you look down on the bottom right corner of Jonathan's screen, you can see it's 7 a.m. So thank you so much. This makes it so much more meaningful that you wake up so early to join
it's almost
us.
dawn. It's almost dawn. Oh,
it's
yeah.
almost dawn.
So yes, I got up early for this. So thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you. I'm taking the screen back so I can wrap up the presentation, and I want to thank you again, Jonathan, and thank you all for attending today. And I want to remind everybody to visit our page at novedge.com, where you can find the entire line of Vectorworks products, including Vectorworks Architect 2018.
And I forgot to promote myself.
Yes, please. So I'm going to share. Yes, in fact, let me share your screen again, so you can show your own tutorial and your page, ArchonCAD, and your store.
Well, I've got two parts. One is a subscription website where every month we go over specific topics. So in a few minutes' time, I've got my Architect Special Interest Group where we just talk about architectural things. We've got later on this week, we've got a Landmark Special Interest Group. So every month I create a new manual. This month it happened to be this topic that we're covering now. Next month it's how to do complex roofs. And you get access to these by subscribing to this website, and there's 2,500 movies, and there's over 100 manuals, and every month we do something new. And the other one that I have is what I call my store website, which is where I have online courses. So if you've gone through the Vectorworks Getting Started, but you want to have a different opinion, why not try my courses? So I have these courses that cover things like Landmark, building information modeling. I've got my foundation course, everything I know about site modeling, and you just purchase these and work through them. They're video based. My Landmark has just gone up in the last couple of weeks. There's about 6, and it was over 6.5 hours of video in that. Lots of tips, lots of tricks, lots of techniques to go through. But yeah, so those are my two sites.
These are excellent courses, guys. Check them out. Okay, so I would also like to remind you that we're everywhere on social media, so come find us on Facebook, Google+, Twitter, and next week webinar about V-Ray for Revit. And if you missed something, don't you worry. We will be posting this recording on YouTube and Vimeo later on today, so you can rewatch it. And also you can go and find previous Jonathan Pickups webinar. We have a playlist with all the Vectorworks webinar so far. So they're all there for you to watch on demand for free. Thanks again for joining us today. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Jonathan. See you next time.
Thanks very much, Barbara.
Bye-bye.